for law school, and then I ended up just blowing it off. I was just like, whatever, which is kind of weird that I did that. But I was in another state. I couldn't even fight it. But he was here, and he got really mad, and he like kind of yelled at them, and then they said he could never come back onto the campus again. And here, horrible crimes were being committed even by teachers. I was molested by an instructor here. There's another one I found in the newspaper who still teaches here, even though he pled guilty to a sex crime here on campus involving minors. Little kids on the swim team down at the rec center, and his name is Brian Walters, and that's in the Daily Olympian. But Arthur got so mad, he was one of the people that made it that the would have to have actual real police here. But I came here and filmed here when Antifa was here. I have a child, and she was about 11 or 12 at the time, and we both came out, and they lit bottles like on fire, and they threw them at my child. They threw them at my child, not at the men, not at me, but at the child. So that's really how they fight. I mean, they fight that low.
I've been in the middle of the victim.
And I have it on film. I have it on film, and I even took it to the police the next day. I said, I have it on film of someone, and they didn't even do anything. They didn't even seem to care that a child had that happen.
For the last about 30 or so years, the mayors and city council of Olympia are basically ex-Evergreen.
Yes, they are.
Alumni,
yes, they are. Mm-hmm.
And they're in support of Antifa.
They are in total support. And there's a really great interview online called Interview with Anna Schlecht. That's SCHL.
I know Anna.
And it's in a queer space. And it's an incredible interview. It's like a 35-page interview. And she talks about how she ran businesses out of town here in the 70s. She brags about it.
That's right.
I mean, it's not me saying it.
I was telling my bus driver
She
coming out
bragged
here about that this morning.
She bragged that she put a place under called the Conestoga, and she says that they weren't even anti-gay. But she just wanted to prove she could. And what's really creepy is in the interview, she says that her parents owned bars in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They lived in Madison, but owned bars in Milwaukee. And it's like, wait a minute, you're shutting bars down in Olympia? How would you like it if your parents' bars had been shut down? But it was interesting because where she was from in Wisconsin, there's another woman I've been following who's kind of on the European scene named Barbara Spector. And I don't know if you know who she is or not, but look her up on YouTube because she is part of the whole mass migration into Europe. It's kind of like her baby. Like if you look at her 10 years ago, she has a thing in Sweden, and she's from Madison and kind of comes from the same background and same age as Anna. So it's interesting to see, like, we've got Anna here, we've got Barbara there, Barbara Spector, and that they've really had a plan in place. And then Anna talks about how she came here and she had money. Her parents had money, and they bought up little houses and then would have people move in who didn't have money and then convert them. So then you've got maybe like an 18, it was almost like sex trafficking from reading it.
They opened up, they had a number, they had the Smithfield Cafe downtown.
Yes.
That was for homosexuals. And then they got, the owners left and they moved over to Dancing Goats.
Yes.
Which is now the homosexual cafe in town, the main one. But Anna Schlecht and them, they had the Thekla dance club for homosexuals downtown. Now it's bought up by another guy, and it's called Jake's, but it's the same direction.
It's weird in there. No, I've filmed in there, believe it or not. I'm kind of brave. And it has kind of pedophile art in there, like Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, like little storybook kids, like on all the wallpaper in there. It's very...
They targeted teenage boys and girls.
Very. Yeah. It's got like almost these pretty 1920s Wizard of Oz, like the original pictures in there. And you just feel like they're really targeting, the teenagers. They're seeing something that they trust from their childhood. It's really weird. I haven't been there in like a few years because I just couldn't. It was during the day too. It was when it first opened, and I just thought I'm going to do this because this is what I do. I film, but it was really, really like hard to take. Hard to take. You're amazing. I'm glad that you know about this because the Anna Schlecht thing. I only found out about I found out about it actually when I was here in 1980. This guy I knew was just normal. He was like a normal guy from Connecticut, and he freaked out and left. But he pointed to her on the street and said, she just got a HUD job, and she doesn't even have a license for construction. And it was true. And she talks about it in the interview online. She says, I was the only woman who applied, and even though I didn't have a license and didn't know anything, they took me. And so then they pretty much shut down the mills and got rid of the population. I'm so sorry. It's probably the tags you're wearing or your backpack. Like, don't take it personally. There's something like on you that he wants. Like sometimes people are like, why am I being singled out? He probably wants your tag. I think he thinks like your backpack or something. He's odd that way. I'm sorry he singles certain people out. And a lot of them are nice and they want to pet him and stuff. But then he'll be perfectly nice to others. I guess I should go, but I don't want to because you're like amazing to, you know so much here. But it was wild. Just go online. It's wild how she just says, I didn't have a contractor's license. I was just a 20-year-old in Olympia, but I made them give me the job because I was the only woman who applied. And then she got that job and just stuck with it ever since. They shut down the mills. They got everything offshore China. They shut down, of course, the brewery. That was many years later. But then just really erased the original population and moved in all her friends. And she has all the jobs with all the housing. And there's one woman that I know who said she basically had to give Anna her son. She had to get a house. She ended up going to court over it because she had to sell her son into the homosexual community so she could get a house.
Yeah, Anna had been married and she had a child in her marriage there, but then she became a lesbian and she became very militant about it, and she would go around trying to pull people into it. She's very militant with it.
Yeah, very. Like the co-op and everything.
Yeah, she destroyed that. Well, in my opinion,
she destroyed the co-op.
She and her crowd of people.
They did. I mean, I volunteered there for years, and they wouldn't hire me, even though I was their main volunteer. And then one day, they were really nice to me, and they were talking about hiring me, and I went home. I could not think why. The night before, I had gotten a haircut, and the guy had cut my hair too short. And I think they thought that I had become a lesbian.
You butched, yeah.
Yeah, and it was no, I just got a really bad haircut.
That would have made a difference.
It really, I know, it was weird. It was they didn't even talk to me, and I was there for years just stocking all their little groceries there. And there was a sign in the back that said employees only, that the volunteers could never go in. One day I opened and peeked in, and it was this big, huge guy eating a bunch of burgers from Burger King in the back.
Harry.
Yeah.
Harry,
yeah. And I was like, wow, this is it, isn't it? I think he was actually from an old New York grocer family. And that he pretty much runs the place, and it's not really a co-op, it's more of
I'm thinking he was from Boston.
Was he from Boston? Someone said he was from an old grocer.
Well, that could
family.
be, but I remember right.
Boston.
I think Boston was where he came from.
But it's interesting you said Boston because my ex is from Boston, and only recently he told me something so creepy. And it was recently. He said, I feel kind of weird about this, but all these people from Boston that were a hive mind, and they were all afraid to do anything alone, they all enrolled at Evergreen at the same time in like 1978 or something. Hundreds of them. They'd all gone to the same private schools. And it's funny because I'm like a New York person, and I was even reading recently that Edgar Allan Poe was from Boston, and he fled Boston and went to New York because he said people in Boston were creepy. They throw their wives in insane asylums, they're just like, they're horrible. They're very control freak, snake pit. And that New York was kind of more Nikola Tesla, more innovative, people doing interesting things, Broadway, more open and fun, Greenwich Village, and that Boston was just like this horrible place with horrible people. And so it's so weird because like, oh, Harry, of course he's from Boston. Like I should have known, But it was weird that my ex told me that. He was like, I never wanted you to know this because like when I came here, I was alone. I didn't know anyone, even though my grandmother was from the area. And it was weird just to see like all these people around. And I found out later, they were all from Boston. And there was also a group from New Jersey that were like New Jersey acid heads that just wanted to like eat LSD all the time. And they were really mad when Kurt Cobain became famous because they were rich, they were from New Jersey, and they were going to make it in the music industry. And they had sound stages, they had equipment. In fact, my ex had a bus and he drove them all around the country. They toured. They were called Heliotrope. I don't know if you... And they never made it.
Well,
they never made it. They still play to this day. And then Kurt Cobain, the guy that they snubbed so bad they wouldn't even talk to. Because I remember seeing Kurt Cobain out in front of the Smithfield a long time ago. I lived in Seattle for like a year before kind of going to New York, and suddenly, who's the big name? It's Kurt Cobain. It's not Heliotrope. It's funny who they are.
But Kurt Cobain was actually from out here. He was born out in Hoquiam, and then his mom moved him into Olympia when he was like 11 or so. And so then he grew up into his teen years here, and then when he got big, he moved up to Seattle. But my oldest daughter and Kurt's sister were best buddies back when they were...
Was he in Aberdeen too? Because Doc said he had a coffee house out in Aberdeen, and Kurt used to come in and like... They'd give him instruments to play and stuff out at the coffee house.
I don't think it was Aberdeen. I think it was Aberdeen and Hoquiam are next to each other. They're like attached.
Yeah.
And I think that it was actually Hoquiam where he was from, but it's the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
It's just
That's interesting that your daughter knew his sister, did you say?
Yeah. Well, there was a number of years between Kurt and his sister in age, but my daughter and Kurt's sister were best buddies when they were in like junior high.
That's amazing. So Kurt, he didn't go to this college, but he, if you're going to talk about names associated with here, he would definitely be one. I think he played some concerts here, correct?
I don't know if he played here. I know they played downtown at like the Tropicana.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they may have played some other places too, but some of the Evergreen alumni had started a dance club downtown, the Tropicana, right on, was it 5th or 4th?
It was on 4th, actually, I think, where Jake's is now.
No.
No, it wasn't?
No, across, it was a small outlet.
It wasn't where Girl City was. Do you remember that, when that pink building for a little while?
Well, the Tropicana was the first one downtown. And this wasn't for Thecla and Jake's were specifically homosexual.
Yeah.
But Tropicana was for the alternative punk rock performers, and then eventually grunge.
And that was more where Kurt was, the Tropicana. I remember knowing someone from there with a group called like the Pet Shop Boys or some kind of group like that.
Well,
kind of punky.
Well, the main guy was Calvin Johnson, and he still owns K Records, and they record and produce. But back like in 1980, his Calvin Johnson's band was probably Cool Rays, or maybe Jungle Action. It might have gone to Jungle Action by that point.
And then Dub Narcotic, that was the name of his studio. Dove narcotic.
Well, was this like anything 1980 or what?
Yeah, and it stayed until recently. I talked to him recently, actually.
In 1980, the studio that the kids out here used was Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown Records. And then a lot of those guys moved up to Seattle, and they became Sub Pop.
Right. Yes.
Steve Foster and John.
Totally. He's like, thank you.
John Foster, Steve Fisk, and John Foster, and a couple other guys. Anyways, they were all first. They would record with Mr. Brown, but then they moved up to Seattle and started the Sub Pop, and that's where the grunge people really became big. Was up in Seattle recording for Sub Pop.
Wow.
But it started here at Evergreen in downtown.
And there was another one called Something A Go-Go too, wasn't there? Indie A Go-Go, around the same time as Sub Pop. You really know a lot of the history. It's amazing. It's incredible. Like, wow.
Well, Calvin Johnson, I knew Calvin because we went to school together.
Oh, Calvin was from Olympia.
Yes and no. His mother was here, and so he grew up here, but then his parents divorced and the family split up. One went to the East Coast, to D.C.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They went to D.C. I've read that, yes.
His mother stayed here, and Calvin eventually moved back here so he could go to Evergreen. And his sister ended up moving to New York. Actually, younger sister moved to New York.
Oh, wow.
And the older sister, I don't remember what she did, but anyway, Calvin Johnson, he was the biggest name in punk rock, sub pop kind of music.
He was huge.
He was world famous.
He was huge, and probably still is.
Is Kay?
Kay just sold, though.
Well,
is he retired a little bit?
No, they downsized. They bought the old Jewish synagogue downtown, down by the post office, and it was too much investment at a time when his kind of music was kind of on the outs.
Yeah.
And so he just sold, I think, 2 years ago to downsize, but he's still in business, but it's not what it was.
You know, I'm going to give him a call. Of all things, my father did a really amazing recording in the 60s of some music, and I've got it on reel to reel. And I think that Calvin had said he could help put it on CD so that we can use it.
Yeah, he's got all that equipment. And the last time I talked with Calvin was right before he moved out of it, and I haven't been to the new place, so I'm not sure where.
I'll let you know how he is. I don't know if you come out here often, but my goal is to film out here every day this week, because I really wanted to gauge what was going on with Evergreen, you know, and to maybe even try to get interviews with people. I'm sure George Bridges doesn't want to be interviewed, but I heard he got a raise. Is that true? That he got a raise after all of this?
I believe so. Yeah, they had the other kind of riot that took place last year, where there were a few on what day was it? Columbus Day, or was it Martin Luther King Day? One of those days, the kids wanted all the originally they had all the black people were going to go on strike and not show up for classes.
Yes.
And then someone said, well, why are we the ones leaving? Why don't we make all the white kids leave instead? And so they
Oh,
were
yeah,
saying all
that's
the white
right.
kids had
Yeah.
to leave the school for that day.
Yeah.
As a kind of a protest thing.
Yeah, that
And-
made national news, didn't it?
And the one of the
Wow.
professors here stood up and said, well, that's dumb. Why don't you just all come
Oh,
to
I'm so
school?"
sorry. He's being so bad. I might have to go. He's getting a little bit rambunctious. But yes, that really made Evergreen hit the news big time, didn't it?
Well,
I mean,
was a series
wow.
of things. Yeah, there's been a series of things that have been knocking the school down. Anti-fall has just been one of the
Yeah.
crowd of problems.
Did you see Tucker at all? Did you see Tucker?
Tucker?